never thought a single sentence could split a family open. But the day I told my daughter I'd been fired, something shifted in her eyes. It was small, almost invisible, but I felt it, like a door quietly closing on the father she used to love. I didn't raise my voice, didn't accuse her of anything. I just watched, listened, and tried to understand when my own child started seeing me as a burden. And maybe, after hearing this, you'll find yourself remembering a moment of your own. I was stirring a pot of chili when I heard her key in the front door. The old lock still stuck for a second the way it always had. A little click, then a shove with the shoulder. I could tell it was Alicia and not the mailman, by the way the door bumped the stopper, then bounced back like it owned the place. "Hey Daddy, you home?" "Back here," I said. The spoon circled through the pot, slow and steady. My right hand was doing the cooking. My left hand was in my pocket, touching the smooth edge of my phone. I'd started the recording 10 minutes before she arrived. Not because I enjoyed spying on my own child, because after 65 years on this earth, 32 of them in this house, I had learned that people talked different when they thought money was leaving the room. Alicia came down the hallway, phone in one hand, tote bag hanging off her arm. Her hair was pulled into a high bun, loose strands everywhere like she'd done it in the car at a red light. "Something smells good," she said. She leaned over the pot, sniffed, then gave a quick half smile. "Oh, you made the chili." Not your chili, like she used to call it when she was little. Just the chili. Little things like that, they stack up if you pay attention. "Figured I'd make enough for a couple of days," I said. "You can take some home if you want." "Yeah, maybe," she answered, already glancing at her screen. "I can't stay long. I've got to get back before Malik leaves for his shift." I nodded, wiped my hand on a dish towel, and turned the stove down. My heart had picked up a strange rhythm, too fast for an old man standing still. This was the moment I'd rehearsed in my head all morning and still didn't feel ready for. "You got a few minutes to sit?" I asked. "There's something I need to talk to you about." She looked up then. Really looked. Even from across the counter, I could see the flicker of worry tighten her mouth. "Is it your blood pressure?" she asked. "Did the doctor say something?" "No, not that." I pulled out the chair at the little kitchen table and sat. The vinyl cushions sighed under my weight. The same chair I'd sat in while helping her with math homework, while filling out college forms, while signing papers when her mama passed. Alicia slid into the seat opposite me, elbows on the table, phone face down beside her. For once. "Okay, Daddy, you're scaring me. What's going on?" I had practiced this sentence in the mirror that morning, but my throat still felt tight. "I got fired today," I said. There it was. 5 words. They hung in the air between us like smoke. Her eyes widened. Her hand flew to her chest. "What? Fired? From Duke?" "From the contract," I corrected. "They're cutting back on outside tech support. My department was non-essential." The last 2 words came out in the flat voice my supervisor had used, sitting across a conference table that smelled like coffee and furniture polish. For a beat, Alicia just stared. The room went very quiet. I could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock, the little rattle in the refrigerator I kept meaning to fix. Then her reaction came, like a curtain closing. "Oh my God, Daddy, no," she said, reaching across to grip my wrist. "Are you okay? They can't just do that. Don't they know how long you've worked, like, in that field?" Her fingers were warm around my skin, but there was something mechanical in the way her thumb patted me. Comfort by habit, not by feeling. "I'm handling it," I replied. "I got my pension, you know that. But the contract pay, that extra, that's gone. Severance is 3 months. After that, it's just the pension check and whatever Social Security finally decides to send." I let that sink in, watched how her gaze slid away for just a second. She pulled her hand back, sat up straighter. "So, what are you going to do?" she asked. Not, "What are we going to do?" Not, "We'll figure it out." Just you. I shrugged, tried to make it look like an old man trying to play strong. "Guess I'll cut back. Maybe sell the truck. The bills will still come. Property taxes don't care who's non-essential." A small line appeared between her brows. "The house," she said slowly, eyes flicking toward the front of the house, as if she could see the siding, the yard, the cracked driveway. "You can't keep up all this just on pension, Daddy." "I've been keeping it up a long time," I answered. "Yeah, but that was with extra income," she pressed. "Groceries, utilities, insurance, meds. It all adds up. I don't know, maybe you should think about other options." There it was, not said outright, but hovering. Other options. Even so, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. "What kind of options are you thinking?" I asked. She chewed her bottom lip, eyes avoiding mine. "I mean, you know, it's a big house for one person," she said. "You're always saying the stairs bother your knee. Maybe, at some point, it'd make sense to move into something smaller. Or somewhere with more support." The word facility didn't come out of her mouth, but it didn't need to. I'd worked too many years with men who couldn't say they were scared without turning it into a joke or a half sentence. I recognized the same thing in my own child now. "I get around," I said. "My legs still work. For now, at least." She let out a short breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "For now," she repeated, then shook her head. "Sorry, that sounded mean." I noticed she didn't correct the idea, though. Just the wording. My fingers curled inside my pocket around the phone. The recording icon had been red when I'd slipped it in. All I had to do now was keep her talking long enough for her to forget it was there. "I did call the bank this afternoon," I added. "Asked about refinancing, just in case. They said at my age, with my income dropping, it'd be tricky." Her head snapped back to me. "You already called the bank? Without talking to me?" That choice of pronoun caught my ear. "I didn't want to worry you," I said. "You got your own bills, your own place to pay for." "Yeah, but this is..." "Daddy, this is the house," she said, tapping the table. "You can't just go playing around with loans and all that. If something happens, it doesn't just affect you." I tilted my head. "Doesn't it? I thought I was the one on the mortgage." A flash of irritation crossed her face before she smoothed it over with concern. "You know what I mean," she said. "This is our family home. Think long term. You always said you wanted to leave something solid behind. You can't do that if it gets eaten up by debt or, I don't know, medical bills." The words scraped against me in a way I didn't show. Our family home. Leave something behind. All my life, leaving something behind had meant something different to me. A way of doing things. A name not spoken in shame. A place at the table for your child when you're gone. Suddenly it sounded like a line item on a spreadsheet. "That's exactly what I've been thinking about," I said quietly. She leaned forward, more alert now. "So what's the plan?" she pressed. "Are you going to start drawing from your savings? Cash out that little 401k you still have? Because that's not going to stretch forever, Daddy." Every sentence had the same center. Money. Not health, not how I was feeling. Dollars, accounts, stretching, not stretching. I decided to push a little. "I might have to use some of the savings," I said. "Maybe more than some. If I can't find more work at my age, that's what it's for, right? To live on." Her jaw tightened. I watched the calculation pass across her eyes like a cloud shadow over a road. "So you'd spend it all just to stay here?" she asked. "In this old place, when you could maybe let someone else help manage things and, I don't know, make sure it doesn't all disappear?" "Someone else like who?" I asked, though I already knew what she meant. She exhaled sharply. "Like me, Daddy," she said. "Me and Malik. We're already helping. We bring groceries, we check on you, we fix things." If your income drops like that, there should be a plan where we're not all scrambling later. That's all I'm saying." It wasn't all she was saying, and we both knew it. But I heard the line beneath the words, "You're not the only one with a stake in this." I sat back, letting the chair creak. My knee hummed with a dull ache. I didn't rub it, didn't want to give her that to point at. "Do you remember when your mama got sick?" I asked her. She blinked, thrown by the turn. "Of course I do," she said. "Why?" "You were 19, I went on, working part-time at the grocery store, taking classes. We didn't know how long we had with her. I watched the medical bills stack up in this very kitchen." Her eyes dropped to the table. Her fingers traced a little scar where a hot pot had burned the wood years ago. "I remember," she said. "I used to sit here at night, running numbers," I said. "Thought I'd lose the house back then. Thought the bank would take it, and you'd have no place to come back to if school didn't work out. I swore to myself I'd hold on to this roof if it killed me." "And you did," she said. "You always made it work." "I made it work without asking you for a thing," I replied. "You got to be the kid. I carried the worry so you didn't have to." Silence settled between us. Not comfortable, but not yelling either. Just the kind of silence where two people stand on opposite sides of a bridge and realize it's not as short as they used to think. Alicia cleared her throat. "Times are different now, Daddy," she said. "We all have to be smart. I'm not trying to disrespect what you've done. I'm just saying maybe the way you've always done things isn't what makes the most sense anymore." "For who?" I asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her hand slid toward her phone, thumb stroking the edge like she wanted to pick it up and leave this conversation behind. "Look, I really do have to go soon," she muttered. "Can we talk about this more after I've processed it? I mean, you dropped a lot on me." I looked at her face. The worry was there, sure, but behind it, something hard. Something already moving around, rearranging furniture in her head. "We can talk later," I said. "I just needed you to know where things stand. The job's gone. The extra money's gone. For now, it's just me and this house." "And me," she added quickly. "Don't forget that." She stood, grabbed her tote, then hesitated. I'm sorry this happened, Daddy," she said. "It's not fair." "Life rarely is," I replied. She leaned down and kissed the top of my head. The gesture was familiar. The distance in it was not. Then she was heading down the hallway again, keys jangling in her hand. "Text me later, okay?" she called. "I might have some ideas once I talk things through with Malik." The front door closed behind her.
The latch caught on the first try this time.
I sat there a moment longer, feeling the empty space she'd left. Then my hand came out of my pocket, fingers clumsy on the phone screen as I checked that the red light was still on and the timer had kept counting while she spoke. I walked into the hallway after Alicia left, still holding the dish towel. My steps felt heavier than they should have, as if the floor beneath me had shifted a few inches while we talked. Nothing in the house had changed, yet everything felt slightly out of place. The walls seemed to lean in a touch. The air carried a tension I hadn't noticed before. Small things, but they gathered around me like dust no one bothered to wipe. My phone buzzed before I even reached the living room. A notification from the neighborhood group chat showed up on the screen. Check on Mr. Holloway. Heard he's going through something. I stared at it, trying to make sense of how quickly word travelled. I hadn't told anyone except my own daughter a single sentence, and somehow it had already sprouted branches. Another message came in, this time from my cousin Sheila. Call me when you can. You okay? Money trouble? I sat down slowly on the edge of the couch. The cushions dipped under my weight, and a small sigh escaped me before I caught it. Only one person could have spread that kind of story in less than an hour. Alicia must have been talking the moment she left the house. The phone rang again. This time it was my neighbour, Mrs. Turner. Baby, I heard something happened at work. You want me to bring over a casserole? No, ma'am, I said gently. I'm all right, just tired. She kept asking questions, but I managed to give vague answers until she finally let me go. When I ended the call, I sat still for a long moment, the phone resting on my thigh. The air had changed again, something sharper now, like I'd broken a promise without realizing it. I pushed myself to stand and wandered into the dining room. That old wooden table had seen years of birthdays, holiday meals, school projects, arguments, everything. Now it felt like a witness I hadn't asked for. A faint knock at the front door pulled me out of my thoughts. When I opened it, there stood Marcus, his cap tilted slightly back, jacket unzipped like he'd walked over in a hurry. Man, you look like someone told you the Panthers won the Super Bowl, he joked. His eyes, though, were searching my face for something deeper. What's going on? I asked. You tell me. I was out front talking with Eddie from over on Maple. Said he heard you lost your job and might lose the house. I figured that didn't sound like something you'd let slip unless it was serious. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Marcus had earned the right years ago. We'd fixed fences together, raised our kids in the same cul-de-sac, borrowed tools so often we joked we shared one garage. I didn't lose the house, I said, and I didn't tell anybody anything. He raised an eyebrow. Then someone else did. That settled in my chest like a weight. Marcus walked over to the table and pulled out a chair. Sit, he said. You look like you need a minute. I joined him, resting my elbows on the table. My hands intertwined, thumb rubbing over the knuckle like it was a habit I'd picked up from some version of myself I didn't want to picture right now. Marcus waited a moment before speaking. You want to tell me what's going on? I hesitated, choosing the words carefully. I told Alicia something today. It wasn't true, but I needed to see how she'd respond. His gaze sharpened. You running tests on your own daughter? Didn't plan it that way, I said quietly. Things have felt different lately. Hard to explain. Try me. So I did. Not everything, not the recording, not the full weight of what I'd felt when she talked about other options. But enough for him to understand that something between me and Alicia had shifted, and I didn't know what direction it would go. Marcus leaned back, folded his arms. "You've been carrying this by yourself, haven't you?" I shrugged. "She's my daughter." And I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Kids say things. They think they're helping. "Helping's one thing," he said. "Talking about your business to half the neighborhood is something else." A bitter laugh escaped me. I didn't think she'd go that far. "People get scared when money comes up," Marcus replied. "Scared folks talk. They say stuff they shouldn't. Sometimes they mean well. Sometimes they mean themselves." I stared at him, letting the words sink in. He drummed his fingers lightly on the tabletop. "Look, let me tell you something my daddy used to say. Silence ain't always wisdom. Sometimes it's surrender. You hear me?" My jaw tightened. Not in anger, but in recognition. That hit a part of me I didn't expect anyone to touch. "I just didn't want to start a fire," I said. "Sometimes the fire's already lit," Marcus replied. "Staying quiet just lets it burn closer to your feet." He wasn't accusing me. He wasn't lecturing. He was offering a truth I hadn't allowed myself to name. I pushed the chair back slightly and stood up, walking toward the small window that looked out onto the yard. The grass had gone patchy in places, and I'd been meaning to reseed it. I noticed the rake leaning crookedly by the fence. That had been on my to-do list too. The phone buzzed again in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. Another message from a number I didn't recognize, asking if I needed help during this difficult time. Marcus whistled. Damn, she really made the rounds, didn't she? I didn't offer a response. Didn't need to. It was clear now that one small lie had sent ripples into places I hadn't planned for, and Alicia had carried that ripple farther than I ever imagined. Marcus stood, walked to my side. "You want me to stick around a while?" he asked. "No, I'm fine. Just need to think." He nodded, adjusting his cap. "I'm right across the street. Knock if you need anything. And hey, don't let folks write your story for you, you hear me?" I nodded once. He let himself out. The house settled back into quiet after he left. I moved toward the kitchen again, took the chili off the stove and ladled it into containers. Hands kept moving even while my mind churned with the same thought. Alicia hadn't asked about my health once after she left. She just wanted to know the numbers. The phone lit up again with another message, but I let it ring out while I focused on screwing the lid onto a container. My grip tightened on the plastic until it gave slightly under the pressure. I slid the container into the fridge and stood there with the door open longer than I meant to. Something about that cool air felt grounding, like it steadied me better than the words I kept trying to find. When I finally shut the fridge, the house felt bigger than it had an hour earlier. The kind of space that doesn't comfort, but reminds you how much room you take up alone. I walked to the living room and lowered myself into the recliner. The phone buzzed once more, a faint vibration against my hip. I didn't reach for it this time. Instead, I stared at the empty coffee table, tracing patterns in the wood grain with my eyes, letting the minutes drift until another thought rose quietly. If this was only the beginning, I needed to be ready when the next ripple came. The next morning started quietly enough, but something in the air didn't settle right. I woke earlier than usual, sat at the edge of my bed and rubbed the back of my neck while listening to the faint hum of the old furnace. It wasn't nerves exactly, more like the kind of alertness a man gets when he knows someone's been walking across his lawn at night. Around 10, I stepped outside to grab the mail. A thin envelope sat on top of the usual bills, addressed to James Holloway, Senior Financial Outreach. That wording struck me as odd. I tore it open right there on the porch. Inside was a glossy pamphlet talking about preemptive estate transitions and ensuring responsible financial oversight in later life. I flipped it over, trying to remember if I'd signed up for anything like that. Nothing came to mind. A line near the bottom caught my eye. Ask your family representative how to begin the process. It sounded like boilerplate, but the phrasing stuck to me. I tossed the envelope into the kitchen trash and poured myself a cup of coffee. The bitterness helped me think. While I sipped, my phone vibrated. A number I half recognized. When I answered, it was Denise, an old co-worker from a job I'd had 20 years ago. We hadn't spoken in months. "Hey Jim," she said. "Ran into somebody yesterday who said your daughter was asking around about elder financial authority laws. Everything all right?" My fingers tightened around the mug. "Elder what?" "Something like senior asset guardianship," she said. She asked a family lawyer we both know. I thought she was helping a client or something, but then I heard your name. My mouth went dry, though I kept my voice even. "That's so? Well, thanks for checking in." We exchanged a few polite words, and I hung up. I set the mug down carefully, afraid my grip might crack it. I wasn't sure what bothered me more, the pamphlet in the mail, or Denise saying Alicia asked a lawyer about elder oversight. Maybe Denise misunderstood. Maybe Alicia was helping a friend. But then again, maybe not. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Alicia. "Morning, Daddy. Don't forget your appointment next week. I can come with you if you want." Appointment? I didn't have any medical appointments scheduled. I scrolled back through my messages. Nothing. She must have meant something else. I typed back, "What appointment?" She replied almost instantly, "Your pension consult, the one I set up. You said it was fine." I hadn't said any such thing, but arguing over text wouldn't help. I left the phone on the counter and walked into my small office off the hallway. The file cabinet stood open from the day before. Alicia had insisted on organizing it last month. She claimed the folders were outdated and messy. Now everything looked neat. Too neat. Some papers sat in places I never would have put them. I knelt down to check the bottom drawer, where I used to keep older tax forms. Several folders were missing. In their place sat a single brown envelope with my name handwritten across the front. My stomach tightened. Inside were pamphlets similar to the one I received in the mail, all about transitioning assets, preparing for declining independence, and transferring property in anticipation of future needs. One brochure had a sticky note in Alicia's handwriting. "Should talk about this with Dad soon." I put it all back, closed the drawer, and wiped my palms on my jeans. Later that afternoon, when I tried to watch a basketball game, Alicia called. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked. "Fine." "You sure? You sounded tired yesterday. I worry when you're stressed." "Appreciate it," I said. "Daddy, you know, if you ever need help handling your paperwork, just let me know. It's easy to fall behind on those things." I shifted in my chair. "I can manage." I know. she said quickly. I'm just saying, it might be smart to let me keep a copy of certain forms, just in case. We never know what could happen. Her tone was gentle, but something beneath it made my skin tighten, like she'd rehearsed that speech. I'll think on it, I said. We hung up after a few more polite comments. The moment the call ended, I opened my banking app and changed every password. Then I dug through a drawer, found a small notebook I hadn't used in years, and wrote down the date, the text messages, what Denise had told me, and the brochures in the drawer. Doing that steadied me. It gave shape to something I didn't want to name yet. A few hours later, I stepped out to grab some groceries. Mr. Patel at the corner store greeted me like he always did, but he gave me a long look. Heard you had some trouble with work, Mr. Holloway. I forced a smile. Folks talk too much. That they do, he said. Let me know if you need anything. I nodded and took my bag of groceries. Walking home, a thought kept sliding through my mind. Had Alicia said anything? Or had she said everything? My phone rang again that evening. Alicia, of course. Daddy, did you get a strange envelope in the mail? She asked. I told the counsellor to send information early. I stopped walking across the kitchen. Counsellor? The financial counsellor for retirement planning. I told you I was setting something up, didn't I? No, sweetheart, you didn't. A beat of silence. Oh, maybe I forgot. I've been juggling a lot. Her voice sounded nervous, just a touch. The kind of nervousness a person gets when they're worried they pushed something too soon. Anyway, nothing urgent, she went on. Just keep the papers somewhere safe. I can help you go through them when I come by next time. I'll handle it, I said. Before she could reply, I told her I had to finish fixing dinner. We said goodbye, and I placed the phone face down on the counter. The house felt unfamiliar again, not because anything had changed physically, but because I had started seeing the small shifts. Papers moved, conversations nudged in certain directions, subtle attempts to guide my decisions. I sat at the table and spread out my grocery receipt, the newsletters from earlier, and the little notebook. I wrote down one more note. She's trying to manage me. The words didn't come easy. Writing them felt like admitting I'd failed at something fundamental. But the evidence kept stacking. My world, which used to feel steady, intact, had moved a few inches off center. I couldn't tell if I was imagining it or waking up to something that had been happening longer than I wanted to admit. I closed the notebook, set it on the table, and stared at the plain cover while my thumb traced the edge. The rhythm steadied my breathing, but only barely. Then I got up, walked back to the kitchen, and started rinsing the dishes still in the sink, letting the water run over my hands while my mind circled the same thought. Something wasn't adding up. Alicia showed up early in the afternoon, long before I expected her. I heard her car pull up, the door slam a bit too hard, then quick footsteps along the walkway. Before I could finish wiping down the kitchen counter, she was already pushing the front door open. Daddy, you home? In here, I answered, drying my hands on the dish towel. She stepped into the living room, carrying a thick manila folder, the kind that bulges when you've stuffed more inside than it was meant to hold. Her expression was set, focused in a way I hadn't seen since she studied for her nursing exams years ago. We need to talk, she said, dropping the folder onto the coffee table. The flap popped open slightly. I caught a glimpse of forms, legal-looking ones, with printed boxes and long paragraphs in dense text. About what? I asked, even though I already knew. "About your situation," she replied. "I've been doing some research, and we need to get ahead of this before it becomes a crisis." She sat across from me, posture stiff, hands clasped like she was preparing to deliver bad news to a patient. "Go on," I said. She took a breath, slid the folder toward me, and tapped the top document. "These are transfer of ownership papers for the house. It's temporary, just until we figure out your long-term plan. If you sign now, we can avoid a lot of financial complications later." I stared at the forms without touching them. "Transfer ownership to who?" She hesitated only a second. "To me, or jointly with Malik. That part's flexible." A small heat crept into my chest. I kept my voice steady. "And why exactly would I do that?" "Because it protects you," she said quickly. "If something happens, if you get sick or can't work at all, or fall behind on taxes, you won't risk losing the house. We'll take care of the responsibilities. You'll have stability." The word stability scraped against me. "I've managed this home for 3 decades, I reminded her. "I've handled every repair, every tax bill, every storm that tore shingles off the roof. I'm not helpless." "I didn't say you were helpless," she replied. "I'm saying things are changing. You're older now. You don't have income coming in anymore. The world is different than when you bought this place. I'm aware of my age, Alicia." Her jaw tightened, like she wished she hadn't said it that plainly. But she didn't back down. "Look, Daddy, I'm trying to help you. You don't see the risks the way I do. With your job gone, everything falls on your pension, and that's not enough for the future. If you put the house under our names, we can manage things for you." There it was again. Manage things. I leaned back slowly but kept my eyes on her. "And what does manage mean to you?" She opened the folder wider and pushed more papers my way. "It means we can make decisions without delay. If you need medical care, if you need to move somewhere with better support, if the house becomes too much. This isn't about control. It's about being realistic." That last word landed harder than I expected. "So you're saying I can't make decisions for myself?" "I didn't say that." "You implied it." She let out a long breath. "Daddy, please don't make this harder than it has to be. We just want to make sure nothing catches us unprepared. Malik thinks..." I held up a hand. "I don't care what Malik thinks." Her mouth pressed shut. A flush crept up her neck. "He's trying to help," she said sharply. "I didn't ask him to help." Her fingers curled around the arm of the couch. "You're being stubborn. And you're being pushy." The silence that followed stretched long enough for me to hear the faint ticking from the hallway clock. She broke it first. "You lost your job, Daddy. You can't just pretend everything's fine. You can't keep living in this house alone without a plan. What happens when you can't pay a bill? What happens if something medical pulls you under? What happens when..." "I'm not signing away my house." Her face hardened. Something cold slipped into her eyes. "If you keep thinking like that, you're going to make things worse. Property taxes are high. This roof leaks. The furnace barely works. You're not a young man anymore. You need support systems. You need someone to take responsibility before it's too late." Too late. That phrase stuck in the air like smoke. "Too late for who?" I asked. She opened her mouth, closed it, then spoke again, her tone clipped. For all of us. You can't leave everything a mess. You can't expect me to clean it up later. The words hit me harder than anything that came before. Clean it up later. Not care for me. Not help me live comfortably. Clean it up. Like my life, my home, was a burden she'd have to sweep up once I was gone. I felt something inside me go still. Not angry, not sad. Just very, very still. Alicia, I said gently, because I didn't trust myself with anything louder. Did you bring these papers because you think it's what I want? Or because you think it's what you want? She flinched at that. Her eyes darted away and returned with a defensive shine. Daddy, please, I'm thinking about your safety. You can't afford to stay here without income. You might end up in a worse situation. And if you resist every plan I make, then I'll have to make decisions you don't like. Decisions for me? If I have to, before something gets out of hand, before you lose everything because of pride. That last word cut deeper than any threat. I stood up slowly. The room felt smaller, though not because of the walls, because of the realization settling into me that this conversation wasn't about fear or care or even practicality. It was about possession and the fear of missing out on something she thought was owed to her. I need some air, I said. Daddy. But I was already moving toward the hallway. I heard her shuffle the papers behind me, maybe frustrated, maybe confused. I didn't look back. My steps carried me to the front door. The cool breeze brushed against my face when I stepped outside. I inhaled, long and steady, until the tightness in my chest loosened just enough for the next breath. Inside, I could hear Alicia pacing. Short strides, abrupt turns. She was preparing another argument, maybe softening her tone, maybe sharpening it. I didn't know. But for the first time since this whole mess started, my mind wasn't cloudy. It felt clear, cold even. The kind of cold that tells a man he's crossed a line he can't uncross. I stayed on the porch, hands resting on the rail, letting the quiet gather around me while her footsteps continued inside. Marcus knocked after sunset. 3 quick taps and 1 slower one. The pattern he always used when he didn't want to startle me. I opened the door and he stepped inside with a look that told me this wasn't a social visit. You got a minute? He asked. Come on in. He didn't bother with small talk. He took off his cap, set it on the arm of the recliner, and leaned against the wall like the news he carried was too heavy for him to sit with. I wasn't going to say anything, he began, rubbing his hands together. But I heard something today that didn't sit right. Figured you ought to hear it from me, not the grapevine. My stomach tightened, though I kept my face calm. Go ahead. He hesitated, searching my expression before continuing. Ran into Earl over at the gas station. He said Malik was shooting his mouth off the other night with some boys he plays cards with, talking like he and Alicia are getting ready to stabilize their future with your assets. That last word tasted wrong in the air. Assets, I repeated. Yeah, Marcus said quietly. Earl said Malik joked about how you can't hold on to that house forever, and it's good they're getting ahead of things before someone else gets their hands on it. I sank onto the edge of the coffee table, hands braced on my knees. My breath came shorter than I expected. Oh, might have heard wrong, I muttered. Maybe, but Alicia showing up today with those papers, that lines up too neat to ignore. He didn't sound accusing, just certain.
That certainty pierced through whatever denial I'd been trying to cling to. The pieces from the past few days began to rearrange themselves in my mind. Denise mentioning legal questions, the brochures in my drawer, the text about a pension appointment, the sudden concern from neighbours, Alicia pushing ownership transfer like she was presenting a business proposal. Marcus watched me closely. "You okay?" "Not sure yet." He nodded slowly.
Jim, listen to me. You've always given that girl everything you could. Nobody denies that. But giving ain't the same as handing over your backbone. I didn't say anything. Words felt too clumsy for the mess inside my chest. He pushed off the wall and rested a hand on my shoulder. Don't let them box you in. Don't let them guilt you into decisions you don't want. I nodded once, barely. "Thanks," I said quietly. "I'll head out," he replied. "Just think about what I said." When he left, the house settled into a heavy stillness. I sat at the table for several minutes, staring at nothing. The idea of Alicia plotting anything behind my back felt unreal, like I'd stepped into a version of my life that didn't belong to me. Still, the evidence kept chiming in, one detail at a time. My phone buzzed. Alicia again. I closed my eyes a moment and answered. "Daddy, are you ignoring my texts?" "I've been busy." "Busy with what? You shouldn't be stressing yourself." After today, I'm honestly worried about you. Her voice had that trembling quality she used whenever she wanted sympathy. I could picture her wiping the corner of her eye, exaggerating a sniffle. "I'm fine," I said. "I just needed some quiet." "Quiet? Daddy, you scared me earlier. You walked out while we were talking. I was trying to help, and you made it seem like I'm the bad guy." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to," she snapped. "I could see it on your face. You think I'm trying to, I don't know, take advantage of you?" I didn't answer. Silence stretched through the phone. "You do think that," she whispered. "I knew it. Malik said you'd twist everything. He warned me you'd blame us for trying to help." Hearing his name thrown in again made my jaw clench. "I'm not twisting anything." "Then why won't you let us help?" she demanded. "You lose one job and suddenly you're shutting us out like we're strangers." "I didn't lose a job. I lost a contract." "That doesn't put me on the street." "It could," she cried. "You don't act like someone who understands the danger you're in. If you lose the house later, everyone will look at me like I failed you. Don't you see that?" So that was the real fear. Not my livelihood, not my comfort. Her reputation. "I never asked you to carry that," I said. "I'm your daughter," she insisted. "People expect me to step up, and if I don't, I'm the one who gets the blame." The guilt she tried to sling over my shoulders didn't settle this time. Maybe because Marcus's words were still echoing in my ears. "You've always given that girl everything you could, but giving ain't the same as handing over your backbone." "Alicia," I said quietly, "I need some time to think." "Think about what?" she snapped. "Signing the papers, letting me help, or pushing me away even more?" "About everything." She let out a shaky breath. "Daddy, don't do this. Don't make me beg you to let me protect you." "You're making me feel like the villain." The twist of that sentence settled like smoke around me. A familiar tactic. Emotional pressure disguised as pleading. I kept my tone level. "I'm hanging up now." "Daddy, wait!" But I ended the call. My hand trembled only slightly as I placed the phone on the table. I pushed it away, almost letting it slide off the edge before catching it again. The next few minutes dissolved in small motions. Walking to the sink, rinsing out a glass, tossing the dish towel onto the counter. My mind wandered through memories of Alicia as a child, the way she'd cling to my arm during thunderstorms, the way she'd ask me to braid her hair before school. What had changed? Or had I just failed to see what was always there? Around 9, I took my notebook from the drawer and sat down. I read through the notes I'd written the past few days, the list of odd behaviours, the things people said in passing, the little slips Alicia made. The pattern was impossible to ignore now. Everything pointed one way. I set the pen on the page, not fully sure what I planned to write, but my hand moved anyway. I need legal counsel. The words looked strange in my handwriting, stronger than I felt, but they felt right. I picked up the phone again, this time not to answer Alicia, not to defend myself, not to explain anything. I scrolled to a number Marcus had given me weeks ago for a lawyer who handled estates and property disputes. Back then, I'd saved it just in case. I never imagined just in case would turn into right now. My thumb hovered only a moment before tapping the call button. The phone rang once, twice, then connected to a voicemail greeting. I waited for the beep. "This is James Holloway," I said softly. "I need an appointment as soon as you have one available." After ending the call, I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair. No grand realization washed over me. No sudden burst of clarity, just a quiet shift inside, like a door closing on something old and opening to something uncertain. I stayed there a while, listening to the faint hum of the fridge and the steady rhythm of my own breathing, until the house felt steady enough for me to stand again. The house felt different the next morning, as if it had been listening to everything that happened the night before. I moved around slowly, taking care not to let my thoughts rush ahead of my steps. There was a steadiness inside me that hadn't been there in days, maybe weeks. The first thing I did was take the papers Alicia left and spread them across the dining table. I didn't rush through them. I read every line the way a man reads instructions for diffusing something he didn't realize was explosive. Name fields, transfer clauses, signatures, witness requirements. Some sections were highlighted with a yellow marker. Those were the parts about ownership. What changed hands, when it changed, who held authority in matters of financial or medical urgency. The language unsettled me, so I took out my phone and snapped photos of each page. Every corner, every paragraph, even the footer with the date. I saved them in a hidden folder and backed them up twice under a name only I would understand. Old truck manuals. If someone happened to scroll through my phone, that folder wasn't going to raise any questions. After that, I stepped into my office and pulled open the file cabinet again. Papers sat in neat stacks, all rearranged by Alicia's hands. I took another set of photos, insurance documents, tax statements, my mortgage record. It wasn't that I worried about losing them, I worried about someone else getting too comfortable knowing where everything was. I moved to my computer and logged into my bank account. The login screen froze for a second, a glitch that made my pulse jump. When it finally loaded, I combed through each transaction from the last 6 months. Nothing unusual. No withdrawals I didn't recognize, no new linked accounts. Nothing that screamed foul play. Still, unease lingered. I changed the password again. This time I used a long string of nonsense that even I wouldn't remember unless I wrote it down. So I didn't. I figured if I forgot it, I could reset it myself. Better that than someone else memorizing it for me. A text pinged while I was still on the banking page. Alicia, Daddy, did you look over those papers? Please don't put it off. A second text followed immediately after. Alicia, we need to act fast before something happens. I didn't reply. She sent a third message, shorter. Alicia, have you signed yet? My chest tightened. Not from fear exactly, more from the realization that she'd already made up her mind about how this was going to go. I put the phone face down on the desk, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. The drive into uptown Charlotte took longer than usual. Traffic crawled, but I didn't mind. It gave me time to steady myself before the meeting. The lawyer's office sat in a brick building a block from the courthouse. A brass plaque beside the door read Harrington and Wells, Family and Estate Law. Inside, the receptionist, a young man with neatly pressed sleeves, asked my name. I told him, and he led me to a small conference room. A woman stepped in a few minutes later, briefcase in hand. She introduced herself as Attorney Wells. Mr. Holloway, thank you for coming in, she said. You mentioned urgency in your message. Yes, ma'am, I did. She sat across from me and folded her hands. Why don't you tell me what brings you in today? I explained things carefully, not accusing, not emotional, just facts. The papers, the conversation, the sudden push toward transferring ownership. Her expression didn't change, but her posture shifted as she listened. I understand, she said after a moment. You're not the first parent in this situation. That alone eased something inside my chest. Not comfort, exactly. More like validation. What I want to do, I said, is secure my own decisions. Make sure everything is where I want it, controlled by me without interference. She nodded. Then we'll update your will and create a legally binding statement of intent. We can also add restrictions that prevent anyone from challenging your capacity without medical evidence. And if you wish, we can appoint a neutral party as your durable power of attorney. Neutral. That word sounded like peace. Let's do all of that, I replied. We spent nearly an hour reviewing paperwork. She asked questions about assets, beneficiaries, medical preferences, retirement funds. I tried to answer plainly. The whole process felt oddly grounding, like reclaiming a part of myself I hadn't realized I'd let drift. And Mr. Holloway, she added before stepping out to print documents. Don't sign anything someone else brings you without showing it to me first. Pressure tactics are common in these situations. I figured, I said. When I left the building, the late morning sun warmed the sidewalk. People hurried past with briefcases and coffee cups, going wherever their lives were taking them. I stood still a moment, watching them, thinking about how easy it is to take your independence for granted until someone else reaches for it. On the drive home, something caught my eye. A dark SUV parked near my house. I'd never seen it before. Two people sat inside, silhouettes behind tinted windows. Maybe they were waiting for someone else, maybe not. I pulled into the driveway and kept my gaze forward, pretending not to notice. The vehicle didn't move. I let myself into the house and locked the door behind me, then peeked through the side curtain. The SUV remained, engine running, brake lights glowing faintly. Alicia had sent 3 more messages. Alicia, Daddy, please answer. Alicia, this is important. Alicia, we need to protect you before it's too late. I placed the phone on the counter and walked to the sink, turning on the faucet just to have something to listen to besides my heartbeat. That SUV could have been anything. An Uber driver waiting for a pickup, a neighbour's visitor, someone lost and checking directions. Or it could have been someone checking whether I'd signed anything. A few minutes later, the engine revved and the SUV finally pulled away. I watched it disappear at the end of the street. A quiet certainty settled over me. No anger, no panic, just clarity. I was preparing for something my daughter didn't know I could see coming. I reached into the drawer, retrieved the folder with my updated will, and placed it on the dining table beside the photos I'd taken earlier. My hand rested on the top page for a long moment, tracing the edge slowly. There was still a lot to do, and more I didn't yet understand. But each step I'd taken today felt like putting bricks under my feet, building something steady where the ground had gone soft. I gathered the papers into one neat stack, set them aside carefully, then opened the fridge to look for something to cook for dinner. Rain blew sideways against the windows that evening, the kind of southern storm that rattles gutters and makes the whole neighbourhood feel unsettled. I had just finished washing the last dish when heavy pounding hit my front door, not a polite knock, but the kind that carries urgency or anger. Before I could reach it, the door swung open. Alicia stepped inside without waiting for invitation, her hair damp from the storm, her coat dripping on the floor. Malik followed, a stack of folders tucked under his arm, his expression stiff. "Daddy, we need to talk. Now." Her tone didn't leave room for discussion. Malik closed the door behind them and hovered near the hallway like security. "What's going on?" I asked. Alicia thrust one of the folders into my hand. "These are the updated documents. We simplified them so you don't get overwhelmed. You just need to sign." I didn't open the folder. My thumb rested on the edge of it, feeling the weight, not of the paper, but of the moment. "Alicia, I told you I needed time." "And I gave you time," she snapped. 2 whole days, but we can't wait forever. You're not thinking straight about your situation." Malik stepped forward. "Mr. Holloway, it's just paperwork. We're trying to set things up responsibly before something slips through the cracks." The phrase irritated me more than the storm beating on my roof. "Slips through the cracks," I repeated. "What exactly do you think is slipping?" Alicia motioned toward the documents in my hand. "Look at them. If you sign, we can make sure bills get paid, taxes handled, repairs covered. You don't have to stress anymore. We'll take care of everything for you." "Including the house?" I asked. "Yes," she said, chin lifting. "Especially the house." A long silence stretched between us. I finally opened the folder. The first page had been rewritten, more basic but far more dangerous. It listed her as the primary owner of my property, for the purpose of ensuring continuity of care and financial stability. The next page named Malik as secondary authority, in the event of emergent need or incapacitation. My stomach clenched. "Absolutely not," I said. Alicia didn't flinch. She crossed her arms tightly. "Daddy, you can't keep being stubborn. You aren't working anymore. Without income, you will fall behind somewhere. And I'm not going to stand by while your whole life collapses on my watch." "My life isn't collapsing," I said. "It will," she insisted. "That pension isn't enough. Bills keep going up. The house is old. You're one bad fall away from a disaster." She spoke the words, "bad fall," with the same tone someone uses to warn a child. It made heat rise under my collar. "I'm not asking you to fix my life," I told her. "I'm saying this house stays mine." Malik's jaw tightened. "Jim, no offense, but you're acting like this is optional. It isn't. Planning ahead is how families stay afloat. I turned to him slowly. Families stay afloat by respecting one another, not by cornering an old man in his own living room. His eyes narrowed, but Alicia cut in before he could speak. You're twisting everything, she said. We are trying to help you. Why are you being so difficult? Why do you think everyone is out to get you? I let out a breath through my nose. Because you keep showing up with paperwork that takes my home away from me. Alicia's face reddened. When she spoke again, the mask of concern slipped. You're not capable of managing all this anymore. You're too old to keep track of everything. You need someone responsible to step in before it's too late. There it was, the line she'd been circling around all week. Old, unable, in the way. My hands loosened around the folder and it fell onto the coffee table with a dull slap. I stared at her, really stared, trying to find the daughter I used to know behind those hard eyes. Instead, I saw calculation. I saw fear, not for me, but of losing the future she built in her head. I saw entitlement, shaped over years of me trying too hard to make up for the parents she lost. A memory surfaced. The night my wife died. I sat in the hallway outside her hospital room and Alicia placed her head in my lap, trembling like a leaf in winter. I promised her I'd hold this family together no matter what it cost me. I had kept that promise. She had turned it into license. Alicia stepped closer. Daddy, please, sign the papers. You can't keep living like nothing's changed. You lost your job. You're not managing your finances well. You need us. You don't know a thing about my finances, I replied. She scoffed. I know you're hiding things. I know you've been acting strange. I know you changed your bank passwords. Why would you do that if you weren't slipping? Why would you do that unless you need supervision? That word landed like a slap. Supervision, I repeated slowly. She didn't back down. You can barely keep up, Daddy. If you lose track of a payment and the house goes into default, what then? Where will you go? Where will we be? You're not the only one affected by your decisions. Malik reached for the pen on the table and held it out to me. Just sign, man. Stop making this harder for her. My vision swam for a moment, not from dizziness, just from the sharpness of everything hitting me at once. The pressure, the accusations, the way they had already decided I was a burden. I took a slow breath. Alicia. What? Look at me. She hesitated, then met my eyes. In hers, I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who asked me to walk her to school even after she was too old, the one who cried when her mother died and clung to me like I was the last solid thing in her world. And I saw something else layered over it. Fear of scarcity, fear of working harder than she wanted to, fear of losing comfort she thought she deserved. Her voice softened. Daddy, we're doing this because we love you. I didn't answer that. Couldn't. Something inside me steadied instead, like a beam settling into place. I picked up the pen, not to sign, but to slide it back toward Malik. No. Alicia's mouth fell open. Malik muttered something under his breath. Daddy, don't do this. Don't push me to make hard decisions. Don't make me be the bad guy. I'm not making you anything, I said. You walked in here with that role already written. Her face twisted, a mix of shock and frustration. You're being impossible. I'm being clear. Rain hammered against the house again, louder this time. A gust rattled the windows. The storm outside matched the one inside my chest. I moved toward the hallway, leaving them both standing by the coffee table. They called after me, but I didn't turn back. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I finally understood how close I'd come to losing everything if I stayed quiet. In the kitchen, I stood by the sink and braced my hands on the counter. Their voices carried faintly from the living room, Alicia scolding, Malik trying to calm her. Both of them arguing about my stubbornness. I let the sound fade into a dull hum. After a minute, I reached for a glass and filled it with water. My hands steadied as I drank, slow and deliberate, while the storm kept shaking the siding. I stayed in the kitchen long after Alicia and Malik's voices trailed off. The storm outside eased into a steady drizzle, the kind that lingers after the worst has passed. I took the chance to collect the loose papers scattered across the table and slip them back into the folder. As I reached for a stack near the edge, my jacket brushed against my hip. Something inside the pocket made a soft click. I slid my hand in and felt the small recorder, the same one I'd used the day I told Alicia I'd been fired. I'd forgotten all about it. The tiny device sat cold in my palm. I pressed the playback button without thinking, expecting nothing more than muffled background noise. Instead, her voice poured out, clear, careless, unguarded. He'll sign eventually. He always folds when I push the right way. My breath hitched. The recording jumped as she shifted positions. Then her tone sharpened. Malik, once the house is under my name, it's done.
And if he keeps slipping like this, we can make the case for assisted care. The man won't last on his own forever. I paused the audio and sat down hard. The chair scraped across the floor, but I barely noticed. Assisted care. Won't last on his own. Make the case. My hands tightened around the recorder until my knuckles ached. The words didn't sound like concern. They sounded like planning. I pressed play again. Just a few more months, then everything will be stable. We can move him somewhere safe, and the house will go to us. He won't fight if we say it's for his own good. A soft laugh from Malik followed, low and satisfied. Knew you'd figure it out, babe. Easy money if you play it smart. My finger lifted off the button. That was it. The missing piece. The part of the puzzle I'd been trying to ignore. The proof. The confirmation. The thing that made every strange moment snap into place like magnets finally aligning. I replayed the last line once, then again. Each repetition steadied me in a way nothing else had. When the storm finally faded to silence, I grabbed my keys, slipped the recorder into my pocket, and drove straight back to the law office. Attorney Wells was in her office finishing paperwork. Her assistant tried to tell me she was booked, but the moment Wells saw my face through the glass wall, she waved me in. "Mr. Holloway, is everything all right?" "I found something," I said. "Something you need to hear." She motioned for me to sit. I pulled the recorder from my pocket and placed it on the table between us. Her expression shifted, measured, focused, like she instantly understood this wasn't a small matter. I pressed play. Alicia's voice filled the room, crisp and unfiltered. Malik's muttered responses followed. When the last words faded, Wells sat very still for a long moment. "That," she finally said, "is not concern. That is premeditation. So it's enough?" She nodded once. "More than enough. With your updated will and this recording, no one can claim you're incapable or unaware. and no court would allow a transfer of property after hearing the nature of this conversation. She rewound a section and listened again. This establishes intent, coercion, and financial manipulation. You need to secure copies of this audio, several, in multiple places. Already done, I said quietly. She smiled faintly. Good. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief, not victory. Something closer to air finally entering a room that had been shut tight too long. Wells leaned back in her seat. Mr. Holloway, people often underestimate the elderly because they assume passivity. But you're not passive. You're prepared. That's the difference. Prepared. The word tasted solid. What do I do now? I asked. Nothing confrontational, she replied. Let the documents stand, keep recording, and expect pushback when they realize you're not cooperating. I nodded. It made sense. It matched everything I'd already been feeling in my bones. By the time I returned home, night had settled in fully. My porch light cast a dim circle across the steps. The silence inside the house felt heavier than usual, like it knew what I carried. I placed the recorder on the table and sat across from it, letting the weight of everything settle. My phone buzzed again. Alicia. Daddy, we need to talk. You scared me earlier. Can you please stop acting like this? Another message came seconds later. Alicia, you're blowing things out of proportion. I'm just trying to protect you. Why won't you believe me? And then, Alicia, are you mad at me? Please don't be mad. I can explain. I didn't respond. Not yet. The phone rang. Her name flashed across the screen. I let it ring until it stopped. Moments later, another message arrived. Alicia, if you won't let us help, then I don't know what else to do. I'm doing my best. You're making everything harder. Those words, you're making everything harder, were the same ones she'd used years ago when she didn't want to face something she caused. Her habit of painting herself as the struggling hero in every conflict. The difference now was that I finally saw her patterns clearly. She expected my silence. She depended on my guilt. She believed I'd fold the moment she cried. But she didn't know I'd heard the truth in her own voice. I stood and poured myself a glass of water, letting my thoughts settle while the faucet ran. My hands felt steady. My mind even steadier. A soft click sounded from the window near the living room, just a branch knocking against the siding from the wind. Even so, I paused, listening, sensing the shift in the air. Alicia would try again. She would push harder. She would use every emotional lever she had. But now I knew her weakness, something simple, something powerful. She thought my silence meant surrender. She never imagined it meant preparation. I set the glass in the sink and turned off the light. The morning air carried a damp chill when I stepped out of my truck and walked up the path to Alicia's townhouse. Her blinds were half closed, the porch light still on, even though the sun had climbed past the trees. My hand hovered only a second before I knocked. Feet shuffled inside. A pause, then the door opened. Alicia stood there in a sweatshirt, eyes puffy. Whether from sleep or from rehearsed worry, I couldn't tell. Daddy, why are you here this early? We need to talk, I said. Just you and me. She hesitated, but stepped aside.
Malik wasn't around. The living room felt too quiet without his heavy presence. Alicia motioned toward the kitchen table, still cluttered with yesterday's mail and 2 empty coffee mugs. I set a small pouch on the table and pulled out the recorder, placing it in the center, like a stone. Then I laid the updated will beside it, followed by a notarized copy of my living trust.
Alicia's face tightened with each item. "What is all this?" she asked. I sat down across from her, keeping my voice even. "My decisions, and my boundaries, and the truth." She blinked at me, genuinely unsettled by my tone. For years, she had only seen one version of me: patient, steady, slow to react. She wasn't prepared for this one. "Daddy, you're scaring me. Why are you acting like—" "Sit," I said gently. She lowered herself into the chair with stiff movements. I rested both hands on the table. "I've made arrangements with my lawyer. My property stays mine. My decisions stay mine. No one will be managing my life but me." Her mouth tightened. "Daddy, you don't understand how reckless that sounds. You're making choices without involving me, without considering—" "That's the point." Colour drained from her face. I slid the recorder closer. "There's more." "What is that?" she whispered. "Something you need to hear." Her eyes widened. "Daddy?" I pressed play. Her own voice filled the room, clear and cold. "Once the house is under my name, it's done. And if he keeps slipping like this, we can make the case for assisted care." Her breath hitched. One hand flew to her mouth. "The man won't last on his own forever." "Stop it," she said sharply. "Stop it right now." I paused the audio. Alicia pushed her chair back as if distance could erase what she'd heard. "That's not... You're twisting that. I was stressed. I didn't mean..." "No," I said quietly. "You meant every word." She shook her head violently. "Daddy, I would never put you in a home. You know I was just venting. Malik said I was upset. You can't take it literally." "I didn't put those words in your mouth." Her breathing grew uneven. "You're doing this on purpose. You want to paint me as some kind of monster so you can justify shutting me out. You're making me out to be greedy and cruel and—" "Alicia." She froze at the way I said her name. "I'm not painting anything. I'm listening. And the picture is yours." Tears welled. Her voice cracked. "I was just scared. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to wake up one day and find out something terrible happened because you were alone and stubborn." I didn't interrupt. She sobbed harder, wiping her face with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. "And yes, maybe I thought about the house, but we're family. That's normal. You should want to help us the way we help you." "Help me?" I asked. Her gaze flickered. "Daddy, you're making everything worse." "No, I'm clarifying what's already been happening." I reached into the pouch again and produced a printed transcript of the audio. Her eyes followed it as though it were a verdict. "From this point forward," I said, "my attorney handles every document, every question, every request. I'm not signing anything from you, not discussing finances, not handing over responsibilities, not explaining myself." Her mouth trembled. "So that's it? You're cutting me out?" "I'm protecting myself." Alicia gripped the edge of the table. "If you walk out that door, I swear I'll tell everyone you're losing it. I'll tell them you're confused. I'll tell them you're turning against your own family. They'll believe me. You know they will." Her desperation didn't sting the way she expected it to. It only confirmed the truth I already carried with me.
I pressed play again, not the whole recording, just one particular line. He doesn't have much value left. Her face blanched. Turn it off! Turn it off! I stopped the audio. The kitchen went unbearably quiet. Alicia covered her face with both hands. Daddy, please. I didn't mean that. I was angry. I was tired. You were honest, I said. She dropped her hands and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her. Not childhood sadness, not frustration, not fear. Defeat. A slow, collapsing defeat. For a moment, part of me wanted to reach out,
Not to fix what she'd broken, just to ease the sting of her downfall. But that instinct had cost me too much already. I stood. Her voice rose in panic. Daddy, please don't go like this, please. We can talk. I can explain. I'll do anything. Don't walk out on me. I picked up my documents and slipped them into my coat. The recorder stayed on the table. That's yours, I said. So next time you tell people I'm imagining things, you'll know exactly what's real. Her shoulders shook. Tears streamed down her face. Daddy, don't leave me alone with this. I stepped toward the doorway, my hand brushing lightly against the frame. No anger pushed me. No triumph carried me. Just a steady, quiet certainty. I didn't look back. The front door opened easily, the morning air cool on my face. I walked to my truck with slow, calm steps, hearing nothing behind me except the distant sound of her collapsing into a chair. I started the engine and pulled away, letting the silence settle around me like a final boundary she could no longer cross. Attorney Wells slid the last document toward me, her pen resting neatly on top. The office felt warmer than usual, maybe because sunlight from the window spilled over the polished wood table. I read through every line again, not because I doubted anything, but because I wanted to feel each decision settle inside me. When you're ready, Mr. Holloway, she said. I signed my name with a steady hand. The updated will, the trust, the restrictions, the durable power of attorney assigned to a neutral party, all of it formed a wall no one could climb. Alicia's name no longer appeared anywhere, not as beneficiary, not as emergency contact, not even as a secondary trustee. Wells gathered the papers and tapped the stack once before placing them into a heavy envelope. You've protected yourself well, she said. You've done all the right things. Her words didn't spark pride, just a quiet steadiness, the kind that settles into a man's bones when he finally stops bracing for impact. I thanked her, shook her hand, and stepped back into the afternoon heat. News spreads quickly when family drama leaves a scent on it. I didn't say a word to anyone, but others talked. They always do. A cousin called to check on me, but the way she tiptoed around her questions told me she'd already heard plenty. About Alicia pushing for control, about some confrontation that ended badly, about lawyers. Then the tone changed. Baby, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, she said, but folks are saying Alicia is having a hard time. I didn't respond. Later, I learned Malik had packed up and left her 2 days after our confrontation. Someone told him about the recording. Maybe Alicia herself. Maybe someone she cried to. However it happened, he didn't stay long. Just walked out, claiming he didn't sign up for a family mess. Her job cut her hours soon after. Too many missed shifts,
too many excuses, too many emotional breakdowns in the break room. She reached out once, maybe twice, each time with short, stumbling messages.
Daddy, can we talk? I didn't mean for things to get this bad. Call me, please. I didn't answer. Not from anger, not from revenge, but because the conversation had already ended the day I walked out of her house. The move to Reedy Creek came quietly. A modest senior apartment complex tucked behind a stretch of pines. No grand welcome, no dramatic farewell. Just a simple key handed to me, and a small space waiting to be made mine. The apartment had a single bedroom, a narrow living room, and a kitchen just big enough for one person to stand and turn around in. It felt right, manageable, honest. I spent the first afternoon unpacking one box at a time. The coffee mugs went into the cabinet above the sink. My late wife's photo sat on the dresser. The stack of important documents slid into the lockbox under the bed. The recorder went into a drawer, still working, still charged, though I doubted I'd ever need it again. While sorting through my coats, I found the old jacket I used that first day, the day I said I'd been fired. I held it for a moment, thumb brushing over the worn stitching along the pocket. One lie had forced every hidden truth into the light. I folded the jacket neatly and set it aside. A chair sat near the window facing the courtyard. I dragged it closer, angled it just enough to catch the last of the evening sun. Traffic from the road hummed faintly in the distance. A few neighbours walked their dogs below. No one knew me here. No one expected anything from me. I eased into the chair, letting the quiet settle over my shoulders. No voices arguing, no footsteps pacing, no phone vibrating with demands I could never meet. Just the soft rustle of leaves and the slow, measured rhythm of my own breathing. A quote my father used to say drifted through my mind. Sometimes peace isn't given. Sometimes you choose it. The sky shifted from bright gold to a muted lavender, the colours blending in a way that made time feel slower. I didn't chase thoughts about the past, didn't rehearse answers I'd never give Alicia, didn't imagine outcomes or repairs. Those roads had closed. A soft knock sounded at the door down the hall, someone visiting a neighbour. Their laughter echoed faintly before fading again. Life continued, indifferent and steady. I rested my palm on the arm of the chair, feeling the slight warmth from where the sun had touched it earlier. The moment didn't need meaning or symbolism. It simply was, and that was enough. The silence stayed with me, not empty, not heavy, just mine.